Harper stood by the large glass windows of her apartment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting the city in hues of orange and purple. The soft hum of the city's evening pulse drifted up from the streets below, but it felt far removed from her reality. She adjusted her long, flowing white dress as she glanced at the clock. 7:00 p.m. Exactly. The wedding was in 3 days, and the excitement she had once felt was now swallowed by an unfamiliar feeling, dread. "Hey, are you ready? Matthew's picking us up in an hour." Her sister Grace's voice echoed from the kitchen. Harper turned away from the window and smiled softly. Grace was always the bright one. Grace was the one who commanded attention. Even with a mere flake of her hair or left that seemed to fill the room, everything came naturally to Grace's charm, beauty, and the ability to make anyone fall under her spell. It was one of the things Harper had always admired about her older sister. "Yeah, just finishing up some things," Harper replied, though her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't sure why, but something fell off. In the kitchen, Grace stood with a glass of wine in her hand, her laughter easily blending with the music playing softly in the background. She was wearing a sleek, tight black dress that accentuated her figure, her dark hair cascading around her shoulders like a waterfall. She turned around, catching Harper's reflection in the polished surface of the countertop. "You sure you're okay?" Grace asked, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. Harper nodded, but it was a practiced gesture, one that barely concealed the gnawing anxiety that had been with her all day. "Yeah, of course. Just a little nervous, I guess." Grace raised an eyebrow. "It's just a wedding, Harper. You've been planning it for months. What's there to be nervous about? You've got the perfect man, the perfect life ahead of you. Everything is set." Harper's smile faltered slightly. It was as if Grace's words, meant to be reassuring, only heightened her unease. Right, perfect. Matthew had been everything she had ever dreamed of. Tall, handsome, kind, successful. He checked every box on her list. They'd met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's party, and from the moment they locked eyes, Harper felt like she was falling into something deep and certain. They had a connection that seemed effortless, one that made all the doubts she'd ever had about love fade away. But recently, Matthew had become distant. It started subtly. Little things that could have been dismissed: missed phone calls, vague answers to simple questions, and the sense that something was slipping away from her. Harper had dismissed it, thinking she was just being paranoid. But when Grace had started spending more time with Matthew, something inside her had started to shift. It wasn't just the late-night texts or the unspoken glances between them. It was the way Grace spoke about him when Harper wasn't around, as if they shared an inside joke that Harper wasn't privy to. "Harper, you're staring off into space again," Grace said, snapping her out of her thoughts. "You sure everything's fine?" "Yeah, fine," Harper replied quickly, forcing a smile. "I'm fine." She knew she was lying. She could feel the weight of her own uncertainty pressing down on her chest, suffocating her. But she couldn't say anything, couldn't voice the nagging suspicion that had been growing ever since Matthew and Grace had become closer. Grace smiled, as if reassured, and walked over to the full-length mirror on the wall, adjusting her dress. "Well, we should get going. Matthew's been so excited all week. Can't wait to see the look on his face when he sees you in that dress." "I'll be done in a minute," Harper replied, her eyes lingering on the reflection of her sister in the mirror. There was a hint of something there, something she couldn't quite place. She had never questioned Grace before, but tonight, something felt different. Once Grace left the room, Harper took a deep breath and walked toward the door of her bedroom. She grabbed her clutch from the bed and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman on the verge of a new chapter in her life, but also one who couldn't shake the feeling that this chapter might end before it even began. She shook her head. "You're just being paranoid," she whispered to herself. But as she descended the stairs a few minutes later, the unsettling feeling refused to let go. The restaurant was a luxurious one, expensive, elegant, and full of people who had the means to dine in style. The mood was lively, but Harper couldn't help but feel out of place, as if the atmosphere was too grand for her current state of mind. Matthew was already seated at their usual table near the window, his back straight, his sharp features illuminated by the soft lighting. When he saw Harper, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "Harper, you look amazing," he said, standing to greet her. He kissed her cheek, his touch warm and familiar. For a moment, Harper felt the tension in her chest. Maybe everything would be fine after all. Maybe she was just overthinking it. "Thanks," she said softly, her lips curving into a smile. Grace, who had been chatting with Matthew's friend, turned toward Harper and flashed a dazzling smile. "Harper, you look perfect as always." Harper nodded, but there was something about Grace's eyes, an unreadable gleam that made her uneasy. After a few moments of pleasant conversation, Matthew excused himself to use the restroom. Harper and Grace were left alone at the table. Grace didn't waste any time. "You know, Harper, you really need to stop overthinking things," she said in a low voice, her smile lingering, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything with Matthew is perfect. You've got him wrapped around your finger." Harper swallowed, suddenly feeling a cold chill in her veins. "What do you mean by that?" Grace leaned in closer, her voice barely a whisper. Don't worry, Harper, you'll always be the little sister. But Matthew, well, he's a man. And we both know men don't always stay faithful, no matter how much they love someone. Harper's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? Grace's lips curled into a thin smile, her gaze unwavering. You're not blind, Harper. You've noticed, haven't you? The way he looks at me. The way he's been spending more time with me than with you. You've noticed, haven't you? Harper's breath caught in her throat. The world around her seemed to spin, the chatter and clinking of glasses fading into the background. She wanted to deny it, to brush it off as nothing, but deep down, she knew Grace was right. Before Harper could respond, Matthew returned, and the conversation shifted. But the weight of Grace's words lingered in Harper's mind, settling like a stone in her chest. That night, as Harper lay awake in bed, her thoughts refused to quiet. Grace's words echoed over and over again, louder and louder with each passing minute. Something was wrong, something she couldn't yet understand, but she felt it, deep within her bones. And for the first time, Harper wondered if she had truly been blind all this time. The church was bathed in golden light as the late afternoon sun poured through the stained glass windows, casting colorful reflections on the polished wooden pews. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers, their fragrance mingling with the subtle scent of old wood. Harper stood at the back of the church, her heart racing as she waited for the ceremony to begin. The sound of guests chatting softly drifted in from the lobby, but it felt as though the world had slowed down around her. She adjusted her dress one last time, feeling the weight of the lace and satin pressing against her skin. She glanced at the clock. It was 4 o'clock p.m. Matthew was supposed to be here by now. Her stomach twisted into knots. Where was he? He had assured her he would be here early, to calm her nerves, to share the moment before the big walk down the aisle. But now, as she stood in the hushed stillness, a deep sense of unease crept over her. Harper, are you all right? Grace's voice broke through her thoughts. Harper turned to find her sister standing in the doorway, her dress of soft lavender hugging her slender frame. Grace's smile was wide, her eyes gleaming with excitement. But Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Grace always had a way of appearing effortlessly perfect, and today was no different. She looked like she belonged in this moment, like she was made for this kind of celebration. I'm fine, Harper sighed, forcing a smile, just waiting for Matthew. Grace stepped closer, her expression shifting to something a little more knowing. You sure? You look like you're about to pass out. I'm just nervous, Harper admitted, her voice quieter now. She shifted on her feet, glancing down at her engagement ring, a beautiful solitaire diamond that had once filled her with excitement. Now, it felt like a weight, a reminder of something she wasn't sure she fully understood. Grace didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a step back and looked at Harper carefully, her smile softening. Harper, you know Matthew, right? He's a great guy. He wouldn't let you down. He's just probably caught up with something. Don't stress. But her words didn't feel comforting. They felt distant. Harper's mind raced. Something wasn't right. The little voice in her head, the one she had been trying to ignore for weeks, grew louder. Before she could respond, the door to the church opened, and in walked Matthew. His eyes immediately found Harper, and he offered her a nervous smile as he made his way down the aisle. Harper's breath caught in her throat as she met his gaze. He didn't look like the man she had imagined standing beside her at this moment. His face was tense, his jaw clenched, and his usual easy smile was nowhere to be found. He was here, but it felt like he was 1,000 miles away. Matthew, Harper whispered, her voice trembling. Where have you been? We were supposed to. I'm sorry, Harper. Matthew cut her off, his voice strained. I needed some time. I needed to think. Harper blinked, her heart pounding. Time. Think. This was their wedding day. This was supposed to be the culmination of everything they had planned for. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just stood there, staring at him. Grace, sensing the tension, stepped forward, her voice light but concerned. Matthew, is everything all right? You look a little off. Matthew ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Yeah, I just needed some space. I'm fine. Grace, really? Harper's eyes narrowed, confusion and frustration rising inside her. What was going on? Why did he seem so distant? Why was he acting like this? She turned away from him, her mind swirling. I don't understand. She whispered more to herself than anyone else. Why now? Why today? Grace shot a quick look at Matthew, then placed a hand gently on Harper's shoulder. Harper, let's just focus on the ceremony. Okay, we can talk later. But Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. She forced a smile, but it felt hollow. The ceremony began soon after, though it passed in a blur for Harper. The priest's words, the vows, the exchange of rings, it all felt surreal, like she was watching it unfold from a distance, not quite part of it. The air was thick with tension, and no matter how hard Harper tried to concentrate on the love she felt for Matthew, her mind kept drifting back to the nagging thoughts that refused to be silenced. As they stood together at the altar, Harper's fingers trembled in Matthew's grip. Her heart pounded as if it wanted to break free from her chest. She glanced at him, searching for the warmth and reassurance she once saw in his eyes. but found only a coldness there. I, Matthew, take you, Harper, to be my lawfully wedded wife, the priest intoned, his voice echoing in the stillness of the church. Harper's voice faltered as she repeated the words, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she was making a mistake. Later that evening, the reception was in full swing. The laughter of guests, the clinking of glasses, and the soft strains of classical music filled the air. But Harper felt disconnected from it all. She smiled and danced with Matthew, but the smile never reached her eyes. Grace was nearby, talking to friends, her eyes occasionally flicking over to Harper and Matthew. Matthew, for his part, seemed distracted. He barely touched his foot, and when Harper asked if everything was all right, he simply shrugged, offering a smile that didn't quite meet his eyes. I'm fine, he repeated for what felt like the 100th time, but Harper could see through it. The way he kept glancing at Grace, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes, the way his hand didn't feel quite as warm in hers. The night wore on, and Harper grew more and more uneasy. When the clock struck midnight, she found herself alone in a quiet corner of the reception hall, staring out at the dark sky through the large glass windows. The world outside seemed so still, so peaceful, but her heart was anything but. Harper, there you are. A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Matthew. His presence was like a shadow, lingering behind her. She didn't turn to face him right away. I've been looking for you, Matthew said, his voice low. She finally turned to face him. Matthew, what's going on? Why are you acting like this? You're not the person I thought I knew. Matthew hesitated. His gaze shifted him uneasily. Harper, I've been thinking a lot today, and I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I can do this. The words hit her like a slap to the face. What are you talking about? We're married. This is supposed to be the start of our life together. I know, he said softly, looking down. I know, but I can't help how I feel. I've been spending so much time with Grace lately. And Harper's breath caught in her throat. With Grace? Matthew looked up at her, his face contorted with guilt. I never meant for things to get this complicated. But there's something between us, Harper, something I can't ignore. The world seemed to collapse around her. Her sister, the one she had trusted most in the world, had been involved with Matthew behind her back. The betrayal cut deeper than she could ever have imagined. I can't do this, Harper whispered, her voice breaking. I can't be with someone who doesn't even know what he wants. Before Matthew could say another word, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the reception hall. The sound of his voice calling her in was muffled by the growing distance between them. The days following the wedding were a blur of sleepless nights and aching silence. Harper couldn't quite wrap her mind around the mess her life had become. Every room in her apartment felt too quiet. The echoes of past laughter and whispered promises now nothing more than painful reminders of what had been lost. She had loved Matthew, truly loved him, but now it seemed that love was nothing more than a fragile illusion. It was a Thursday evening when Harper finally found herself standing outside Matthew's apartment building, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had tried to ignore the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right, but she couldn't anymore. She needed answers. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she took it out, only to see a message from Grace. I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you want to talk. The message was a feeble attempt at an apology. Harper knew Grace had always been the charming one, the one who could manipulate a situation with just a smile. But now, after everything that had happened, Harper couldn't bring herself to believe that anything Grace said was genuine. She pocketed the phone and stepped forward, pushing open the glass door of the building. The elevator right up to the top floor felt agonizingly slow. Harper's heart pounded in her chest as she arrived at his door and raised her hand to knock. But before she could do so, the door swung open. Harper, Matthew said, his voice a mix of surprise and something else, guilt, regret. Harper couldn't tell. Matthew, she replied, her voice tight with emotion. We need to talk. He stepped back to let her in, and Harper crossed the threshold into the apartment that had once felt like home to her. But now, the place seemed foreign, filled with memories that only hurt. Why didn't you tell me? Harper asked as she turned to face him. Why didn't you tell me about Grace? About what was happening between you two? Matthew opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Harper, No, Harper interrupted, shaking her head. Don't apologize. Don't try to explain. Just tell me the truth. Tell me how long this has been going on. Matthew's silence was all the answer Harper needed. She felt the floor beneath her shift, the ground slipping away as the weight of his betrayal settled on her shoulders. I was confused, Matthew said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what I wanted, and then I started spending time with Grace, and things got complicated. Complicated, Harper repeated, her voice writhing. You ruined everything, Matthew. You ruined me, and you used Grace to do it. Matthew's face twisted with regret. I never meant for it to happen this way. Harper, you have to believe me. But Harper couldn't. Not anymore. You've already made your choices, she said, her voice cold. And I've made mine. The following week, Harper's world seemed to shrink even further. She didn't speak to Grace or Matthew, retreating into the safe cocoon of her own solitude. But no matter how far she tried to distance herself from the pain, it lingered in every corner of her life. Harper spent most of her days at the small cafe down the street from her apartment, sitting at a window table with a cup of coffee, watching the world pass by. She had always loved this place. Its warm, welcoming atmosphere offered a brief escape from the storm raging inside her heart. One afternoon, as she sipped her drink, she saw a familiar figure walking across the street toward the cafe. Grace. Harper's first instinct was to get up and leave, but she couldn't bring herself to move. Instead, she watched as Grace entered, her eyes scanning the room before they landed on Harper. There was a brief moment of hesitation before Grace made her way over. Harper. Grace sat softly, sitting down across from her. Her voice was gentler than Harper had expected. "Can we talk?" Harper didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure what Grace could possibly say that would make any difference now. "Harper, I know you're angry," Grace continued, "and I get it. I've messed up. But you have to know, I never wanted to hurt you. Not like this." Harper met her sister's eyes, her heart pounding. "Then why did you do it, Grace? Why did you sleep with Matthew behind my back?" Grace's face tightened, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. "It wasn't like that. It wasn't planned. I never meant for it to go as far as it did. But I was confused too. I've always felt like I had to be perfect for everyone. And when he started paying attention to me, it felt good. It made me feel wanted." Harper sat back in her chair, her hands scraping the sides as if to steady herself. "You knew how much I loved him. You knew what he meant to me. And yet you chose him over me, over our bond." "I didn't think about it that way," Grace whispered. "I was selfish, and I'm sorry. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to try." Harper shook her head slowly. "You've already broken everything, and I'm not sure I can ever trust you again." That night, Harper lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the conversation with Grace. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. The trust was gone. The connection shattered. The love she had once shared with her sister felt like a distant memory, an illusion crafted by years of familiarity. Her thoughts drifted to Matthew. She hadn't seen him since their confrontation. He hadn't even tried to apologize. Not truly. Harper closed her eyes, allowing the tears to fall freely. But this time, she didn't try to stop them. She let herself feel every ounce of pain, every ounce of betrayal, because this was the only way she could heal. 2 months had passed since Harper had confronted Matthew and Grace. The pain had dulled but never completely gone away. She still walked around in a haze, her heart fractured in ways she wasn't sure how to fix. But she was trying to rebuild her life, trying to figure out who she was outside of the relationship that had defined her for so long. Harper had taken a leave of absence from work, deciding to focus on herself. The long walks through the city, the quiet moments at her favorite cafe, the time spent in solitude, all of it helped her process the emotional turmoil that had appended her life. One evening, as Harper sat at a bench in the park, the cool autumn breeze brushing through her hair, she received a call from an unknown number. "Harper, it's Matthew," came the voice on the other end. He sounded different, older, weary. "Can we meet? There's something I need to say." Harper hesitated. Part of her wanted to hem up, to shut him out completely. But another part of her that still cared, despite everything, wanted to hear what he had to say. They met at a small diner, the kind that served greasy food and strong coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but it was neutral ground, somewhere neither of them could pretend to be anyone they weren't. Matthew sat across from her, his eyes heavy with regret. "I'm sorry, Harper," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I've spent these past 2 months trying to figure out what went wrong, and I realized that I've hurt you in ways I can never undo. I was selfish, and I let my own confusion take control." Harper stayed silent, her gaze fixed on her coffee cup. The air between them was thick with tension. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Matthew continued. "I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. For everything. For betraying you. For being a coward." Harper finally looked up, meeting his gaze. "You think this is enough? A simple apology?" "You ruined everything, Matthew. You ruined me. I don't know who you are anymore, and I'm not sure I ever will." The words stung, but they were true. She had loved him, but that love had been warped by his actions, by his betrayal. It wasn't just about the affair with Grace, it was about the lies, the deception, the realization that the person she had trusted most in the world had never truly been the person she thought he was. "I never wanted to hurt you," Matthew said softly, his voice breaking, "but I did. And for that, I'll carry the weight of my mistakes for the rest of my life." Harper stood up, pushing her chair back with a sudden force. "I can't do this, Matthew. I can't keep living in the past. I need to move forward. I need to find myself again." She turned and walked away, leaving Matthew behind in the dimly lit diner, his apologies falling on deaf ears. Harper didn't look back. A week after her meeting with Matthew, Harper found herself standing at the edge of a new beginning. She had moved out of the apartment she had once shared with him, putting the past behind her as best as she could. But healing wasn't as simple as packing up and walking away. She still felt the weight of everything that had happened, still carried the scars of betrayal that no amount of time could erase. Harper had started therapy, trying to understand her feelings, trying to heal her broken heart. It wasn't easy, but it was a step toward reclaiming her life. She had also started working again, throwing herself into her job with a newfound sense of determination. The routine helped, the work was familiar, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like something she could control. But the nights were still the hardest, alone in her bed. The silence was deafening. It was during those moments of quiet that the weight of her choices pressed down on her the most. She couldn't change the past, but she could change her future, and that was a freedom she hadn't known in a long time. Harper stood in front of the mirror, her reflection almost unrecognizable. The woman staring back at her was different from the one who had stepped into Matthew's life 2 years ago. She had grown stronger, yet there was still an echo of vulnerability in her eyes, an echo she wasn't ready to silence. Not just yet. The woman in the mirror had learned to survive, to fight through heartbreak, to piece herself back together after everything had crumbled. Today was the day she was going to take the first step toward moving on. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope, a flicker of the woman she had once been before love and betrayal tore her apart. The sound of her phone vibrating on the bathroom counter broke her thoughts. She picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was a message from Grace. "I heard you're starting therapy. I hope it's helping. I'm really sorry for everything. Please take care of yourself." Harper's heart tightened, but she didn't respond. The words were hollow now, no longer capable of undoing the tales of manipulation, the web of lies that had torn her apart. Grace's apology came too late. Harper had spent too much time waiting for her sister's approval, for her love, only to realize that Grace's affection had always been conditional, built on a foundation of insecurity and selfishness. Harper tucked the phone back into her pocket and took a deep breath. She was done with the past, done with the mistakes, the people who had failed her. It was time to focus on herself. Later that morning, Harper found herself walking through the bustling streets of the city, the crisp autumn air biting at her skin. She had always loved the feeling of the city in the fall, the way the trees seemed to explode with color, the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifting from the corner cafe, the sound of busy footsteps rushing by. She had decided to meet her best friend, Emma, for coffee. They had been friends for years, and Emma had been one of the few constants in Harper's life, someone who had stood by her when everything had fallen apart. As she entered the cafe, she saw Emma sitting at a window seat, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She waved when she saw Harper, and Harper smiled, her heart lightening at the sight of her friend. Emma had always been the optimistic one, the one who could make Harper laugh even in the darkest moments. "Hey," Harper said as she sat down across from Emma, taking in the familiar warmth of the cafe. "Hey, you," Emma said, her voice filled with warmth. "How are you holding up?" Harper shrugged, offering a small smile. "I'm doing okay. Therapy's been helping. It's been a lot to process, but I think I'm starting to understand myself again." Emma nodded, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm so proud of you, Harper. You've been through hell, and you're still standing. That takes strength." "I don't feel strong," Harper admitted, the weight of her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Sometimes it feels like I'm still that broken person, you know, like I haven't moved forward, no matter how hard I try." "You have moved forward," Emma said, her tone firm. "You're taking control of your life again. You're healing. It's just going to take time. You've been through so much, and it's okay to feel lost sometimes. You're not alone." Harper looked at her friend, her eyes filling with tears. Emma had always been there for her, offering her comfort when she needed it most. "I don't know what I would do without you," Harper whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Emma smiled softly, reaching across the table to squeeze Harper's hand. "You'll never have to find out. I'm not going anywhere. We'll get through this together." The words were simple, but they had so much weight. For the first time in months, Harper felt a sense of peace. She wasn't alone. She wasn't broken beyond repair. She still had the people who loved her, the ones who had never left her side. Later that day, Harper found herself walking through a local park, the golden leaves swirling around her as the sun dipped low in the sky. She loved this time of day, when the world seemed to quiet down and everything felt peaceful. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unfamiliar number. "Hello," Harper answered, her voice tentative. "Harper," the voice on the other end said, and Harper's heart skipped a beat. It was Matthew. She took a deep breath, the memories flooding back, memories of love and betrayal, of everything that had been lost. She had sworn she wouldn't let him back into her life, that she wouldn't allow him to hurt her again. But now, with his voice on the phone, she found herself hesitating. "Matthew," she said slowly, her grip on the phone tightening. "What do you want?" I need to see you," he said, his voice strained. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Harper. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to apologize to you properly this time. I need you to hear me out." Harper closed her eyes, her heart racing. She had spent so much time wishing for an apology, for some kind of closure, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to do with it. I don't think there's anything left to say, Matthew, she said, her voice calm. Despite the turmoil raging inside her, you had your chance, you broke me, and now it's time for me to move on. I never meant to hurt you, Matthew said, his voice cracking, but I did, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I don't know how to make things right, but I need you to know that I'm trying. I want to make amends. Harper stood in the park, staring out at the horizon, the weight of his words sinking in. She had loved him once, but now, she realized, the love was gone. It had been replaced by something else: anger, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal that couldn't be undone. I can't do this, Matthew, she said, her voice firm. I've spent too long holding on to something that wasn't real. I need to let go. I need to find my own happiness. Without you, you're not a part of my future anymore. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Harper could almost hear the pain in his breath. I understand, Matthew said quietly. I just wanted you to know, I'll always care about you. Harper felt a pang of sadness, but it wasn't for him. It was for the person she had been, for the hope she had once had that things could be different. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes. I'll always care about you too, she whispered. But it's time to let go. She hung up the phone, her hand trembling slightly. But there was a sense of relief in her chest, a weight lifting that she hadn't realized had been there all along. Harper looked up at the sky. The last rays of sunlight cast him a warm glow over the park. She was scared, unsure of what came next. But she was also free. For the first time in a long while, she was finally free, and that was enough.